group of really high achieving female, both entrepreneurs and executives. And we were having a session earlier this week where people were vocalizing their commitments for the next month or in this new spring season. And what came up over and over again were women expressing that they need to fully commit back to their health, which shocked me because I thought it was going to be focused more on career or their relationships or maybe even their children or reconnecting with other people. But it was really about their health, and it made me realize, wow. As much as I've been now diving deep into understanding women's health, being an advocate for women's health, it still astounds me today that so many people really forget about advocating for themselves because they're spending so much time advocating.
Welcome to Unmute with Priya, the podcast where silence ends, voices rise, and women rediscover the freedom to speak and live authentically, especially in life after 40. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Priya Sudarshanam. Let's dive into today's conversation. My guest on Unmute with Priya today is Andrea Jang. Andrea is a senior real estate executive with nearly 2 decades of experience leading some of the most complex platforms in commercial real estate in New York City. But today, as my guest, she's here in a different capacity. She's a daughter who fought to get her mother proper care after a concussion, and a woman who recently looked around a room of really high-achieving women and realized all of them had put their own health last. And Andrea, you're here to talk about what it actually takes to change that. You're the founder of Peribloom, which I'm so excited to talk about today. And we're going to talk about finding the voice that we've been using for everyone else and finally turning it on ourselves. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Priya. And it's always so great to chat with you. I feel like we always have so much fun together. I'm excited to just, really speak a little bit more about some things that have just come up more recently for me. And I'm part of this group of really high achieving female, both entrepreneurs and executives. And we were having a session earlier this week where people were vocalizing their commitments for the next month or in this new spring season. And what came up over and over again were women expressing that they need to fully commit back to their health, which shocked me because I thought it was going to be focused more on career or their relationships or maybe even their children or reconnecting with other people. But it was really about their health, and it made me realize, wow. As much as I've been now diving deep into understanding women's health, being an advocate for women's health, it still astounds me today that so many people really forget about advocating for themselves because they're spending so much time advocating for others. Wow. And I've just seen that these women, they're fighting for everything else, and somehow they're just putting themselves last on their own list. And I'm hoping that out of today's conversation, we can start helping women really find that voice so that they can advocate for themselves and be able to set boundaries so that they know when they need to prioritize themselves over others.
This is a great conversation because as we were talking before we started recording, life doesn't stop lifing because of stages in life. It's going, and a lot of the people that I've spoken to, a lot of the women that I've been around, have hit a certain point and then they've realized, hey, I got to start taking care of myself, similar to what you just described. And meanwhile, there were things that they could have done along the way to maybe have mitigated some of the issues that they're facing now for not taking care of themselves. So in your experience, in your conversations, why? Why do we do this? Or why is this happening?
I think that there's just so much about women just being trained or being thought of in society and community as givers. And maybe we look at others in our families that have come before us, our mothers, our grandmothers, and just seeing how giving they are. And, there's givers and there's takers in the world. And I think that most women that I come across are always helping others and giving. Like even female bosses I've had in the past, they always end every conversation with, well, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that with that framework in mind, we're always giving and we're never really thinking about ourselves until something hits rock bottom. I can even see this from when I led, a pretty big corporate career and it was running, 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 running. You had to really consciously think of taking time for yourself. And so many times you just think, okay, I can push a little bit more, I can go one step further. I'll rest, or I'll eat something healthy, or I'll do that workout another day. You push that, kick that can down the road, because that need to be, have that sense of urgency and always be responsive, I think is so ingrained in women, so that they can maybe even feel visible in society.
I can resonate with that, especially culturally. I'm Asian Indian, and I look at all, as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, every single woman in my family that was raised around, even just knowing about in India, they were all givers. They were raised to just give and give and give and give and give. And I never saw anybody giving to them. They were the ones taking care of everybody. And then I realized I was doing the same thing until I hit hit my head, essentially, but literally, because
Right.
it was too much. Yeah.
Right. And I think that, at the beginning of the year, my mom was in this really, really bad ski accident, and she was hit from behind. It was completely not her fault. It was just a terrible, terrible accident. And that accident itself forced two things. One, my mom actually had to start setting boundaries for herself, because the pain was so severe that if certain people started reaching out to her and want to talk to her about the most dramatic or mundane things going on in their lives, she actually had to tell them that she could not interact with them. This is the first time I've ever heard my mom just like stop listening and literally say, I can't even go there. And that was because it was to this point where things were so physically difficult for her,
Yeah.
that it was the first time in my life that I've heard her advocate for her own well-being, which is
Wow.
great. But also through this whole journey, I learned that I had to really fight for her to get the proper health care and that she needed, from the medical system, and also just like from understanding in our family, because everyone just saw, oh, mom's resilient, mom's great, like mom's gonna bounce back, she's totally gonna be fine, like it's not a big deal. And until I really sat down and I would talk to her just one-on-one when no one else is in the room, she then started to express to me the pain is actually a lot more severe than I'm telling people. And I'm saying, you can't do that. But then she said, I feel really bad for expressing my pain to others. Like, I can just suck it up. And I said, no, Mom, now is the time that you can get proper care through this excellent healthcare system in Canada, and everyone is going to listen to you. And there was a little bit of this fear at first, and I had to really advocate for her and really push, like, no, her pain is not at a 3 or 4. It's really at an 8 or 9. But she was thinking about people who were suffering in like other countries, and she was relating to herself. I can't be in as much pain as those dying children in Africa. She literally told me that. I said, Mom, it's not about the comparison. It's if you don't express that you're in pain, the doctors can't actually diagnose or even treat you in the way that they want to help you. And no one will really, even at home, think that it's very serious if you don't actually say it's serious. But it was really until the point where she could barely even walk down the stairs and she was crying, and I've never seen her cry through pain, that I knew, okay, there's something that is really, really serious, and we really need to get the care and the attention she needs. And luckily we did. She had a brain bleed, and her brain was getting, like, it was swelling. So this was really, really serious, but she was not even expressing any, pain or anything for herself until I told her, like, you need to really start telling me how bad it is. And so I think that it's so interesting in that now that I think about it, even like reflect on myself, like we're trained so much to help advocate others. I'm hoping that we can take that same level of like determination to advocate for ourselves as well.
Tell me a little bit more about advocating for your mom. Did you have to do a lot of advocating for her in this process of getting her the appropriate care?
So it was more about really expressing the level of severity
Okay, yeah.
that the pain was, not only to the healthcare practitioners, but also to the people at home. You know, telling my dad, like, no, like for the first time in my life, I really felt like I'd stand up and say things to my parents and to my dad and say, well, we need to go and do it this way. This is how we're going to do it. And I mean, I come from a family where I do respect elders and I let them kind of like, there's deference to them, but this was, no, this is a matter of health, well-being, and possibly life and death. And this is the way we're going to approach this. This is the way we're going to approach that. This is how we're going to document everything. And luckily, my father and I have a great relationship. And so he was able to really just like get on board. And I realized maybe he was also struggling with understanding the severity of everything, or maybe a little bit in denial because he was scared.
Yeah.
But being able to just stay really level-headed and really focused on these are things we need to do to make help mom get better. These are things that are going to help her. And so
And it sounds like you set boundaries.
I did. And I feel like this is the first time I've really set boundaries with people at home, you know, your parents. And I think it's so funny because I listened to some other women talking about, oh, I've had my mom move back with me. And even though I'm like 50 years old now, I need to prevent myself from becoming that 15-year-old daughter again. Because that's what you naturally become. I think that maybe also being Asian Canadian, now Asian American, you tend to have this whole like deference to elders.
Yes,
a little
totally.
bit more. And so that little voice in the back of your head that, no, I'm not a kid anymore, and you have to also make your parents realize you are an adult in the room as well. That balance can be a little bit challenging at times.
Yeah, I agree with you there, because I can be the adult in the room, and then I become the teenager, and my mom is sending me home with food for the week,
Right.
and like, yeah, this is never going to change, and I accept it. It's fine, yeah.
Right.
But let's talk a little bit more about boundaries, because as you've said, as you shared with me, it's a direct health input, right? And when we say yes, when we mean no, it's a health decision. We're really affecting ourselves. And I don't think we actually tune into our own bodies and how it's affecting us when we're doing things without setting boundaries.
Right.
What would you say to that?
Yeah, and I think that you've just really hit the nail on the head, Priya. I think that boundaries in general are not just, we're not just setting them around, you know, health advocacy, but it's really about, it's not trying to avoid conflict or not even just like self-protection, but setting appropriate boundaries with your relationships, friendships, work expectations is really important, because it does come with, you know, a direct impact on your health. And I've seen this time and time again with senior executives that are delaying surgeries or putting off like medical procedures because they need to go on that one extra work trip, or they need to throw in those extra meetings, or not even taking time. And I'm not even saying like everyone's now talking about these like take an entire mental health day. It's like, let's take a health hour. Let's take 45 minutes to just stretch or decompress, or even just take a couple like deep breaths or grab a meal. I mean, I'm talking to people now who tell me that they don't even have time to eat throughout the day because they're in back-to-back meetings. They don't even have time to run to the bathroom. And that is really concerning. I've seen that happen to people on the trading floor, and they've had to retire early because they've become like had medical issues from just not going to the bathroom all day long.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
at what cost are we putting ourselves in these positions for what type of gain? And like outside of the financial gain, are we chasing these like external validation measures? And are we doing them? Is it ambition? I think that this thread of high achieving women, extremely ambitious women, comes like it's great to be ambitious, but like at what cost, right? And being able to balance that and feel comfortable and confident with yourself at some level, and that is a huge mental exercise for everyone. And I think that chasing these external validation measures to a point where it impacts your health is really dangerous. And I don't think enough people think about that because they're always wondering, well, what are other people going to perceive of me? Am I going to be invited to the table? Is that room going to be open for me if I don't have this accolade or this title or make this amount of money? And like, how important is that at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and then you stop losing your passion, and then it just becomes a performance. You're doing things to get that external validation, and meanwhile you're withering away and developing all these health issues that.
And again, I think, yeah, bringing it back to the performance. When is it real, and when do your day-to-day motions become just performative?
Yeah.
Knowing the difference and being able to wake up and be like, I'm really excited to do this. I'm still jazzed up. I love this. But also being able to push back and say, okay, I can continue to do this, but only if I'm able to have this type of break or be clear with what my needs are. Here are my non-negotiables, and not worry about seeming difficult or how people are going to perceive you, but really taking a firm stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a point besides your mom's injury, was there a point that you've had this wake up that you're like, I can't do this way anymore?
That's a great question. I think it's something that I'm still, dealing with day to day now. I don't think that that's going to be something that goes away. That's life. Right now, I'm actually balancing whether or not I want to take on, another big initiative that could be really game changing for my career in a number of different respects. But at the same time, it's like, at what cost is this going to be? And if I am to take on this project, this endeavor, like, what are the non-negotiables that I need to put on the table? And what is my worth as well? And it's really asking for what you've earned in life and what you believe is your worth, but also being able to lay on the table, even with these expectations, this is what I can provide and at this timeline.
Yeah.
And really, really laying it out. And that does sound like a little bit theoretical right now, but it's like when you break it down, it's really thinking through, well, these are things I can offer, but this is what I need in return. And these are the boundaries that I need to be able to perform these deliverables. That being said, it's also important to know that not everything is riding on you. So even if not all of these items that you are hoping to achieve, if they don't all hit, it's not your fault.
Right.
And I was speaking to somebody else earlier this week about that as well, and she's CFO of this med tech company, and she was saying, Andrea, it got to a point where I was really at a breaking point, and then I realized that I had to change my mental mind shift on it, and that it isn't my fault if not everything is performing at the expectations that we had set out to achieve.
Yeah.
And no one is going to blame you for it. They may make you think that they're going to blame you for it, but at the end of the day, they can't.
Yeah.
Because no one's an island and no one's doing this on their own. We are doing this as a team, and there's so many external factors that come into play that affect the output anyways. So even if you have a goal or a North Star or whatnot, if it doesn't hit in the way that you're hoping it will, it's not your fault. And I think that that's what so many women like get really hung up on, is that, well, if it doesn't happen, then like, oh my God, it was my fault that we didn't get there. It was my fault that we failed.
Absolutely. I could totally resonate with that message. I think it took so many years to just think, if this crumbles, it's not my fault. Because when you think that is your fault, you've got this death grip on it and you're hanging on to it with dear life. Meanwhile, it might be the thing that you just need to set aside or set a boundary to free yourself. Because and when just thinking about stress responses in our body, going back to the body. And I had a guest on here probably a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about the statistics that what health conditions women actually have. And it was so much higher for women than men with stress and autoimmune and all of these things that we carry within our bodies. And I think it's finally time that we need to start taking charge of that, and back to taking charge of our own health. And so it starts with those boundaries.
Right. And I think that, I mean, it's crazy because women's health hasn't been studied nearly as long as men's health as well. So maybe that's why so many things are coming up. Yeah. But the reason why founding Peribloom has been so important to me is that what I'm trying to build here is really helping women encompass health and well-being from the 4 pillars of mindfulness, nutrition, fitness, and supplementation, and incorporate it with, the traditional medical system, understanding your labs, understanding when to ask doctors more questions. And I think that now, like doctors, especially doctors who are very attuned to what's going on with AI and what's all the dissemination of information, a lot of doctors now are much more attuned and much more receptive of having these broader conversations. And when you push on them to really advocate for yourself, I wouldn't say all doctors, but like a lot of the doctors I've met have been very open to explaining things in much more detail. But it is important to come well prepared, take the notes, write down your list, because you only have 15 minutes, 30 minutes with a doctor at any given time. If you are not super organized and disciplined with your health, they really cannot help you either. You have to treat yourself as a priority. You almost have to treat your health like it is a job. And I mean, it does take discipline, and it is not easy, but I think that just little micro changes every single day, they do compound, and they really help to change your mindset, reframe the way you even think through things from a mind standpoint, which can affect your physical, body as well, and just how you process information and how you take it.
Yeah, I love that. I had another guest on, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and she was CEO of Fortune 500 company, was just high performing, and then she got this cancer diagnosis, and that's her book that she just wrote about that. But she said she literally she had to be the CEO of her own life. And just like she would go into one of these meetings with the Fortune 500 company, she went in with a binder, fully prepared, to the doctor, saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. And she ran the show rather than maybe going in for a short visit and being dismissed, which is often what I hear some of the women that I speak to say that happens when they're going to the doctor, especially when they're navigating menopause and this time of their life. But yeah, essentially we do need to be the CEOs of our own health.
I love that. I love the tagline, being the CEO of your own health.
Yeah.
Because you really just have to approach it and even explain. If you go to a doctor and say, I just don't feel great, what does that even mean? You have to really break it down. Does that mean I used to be able to sleep 8 hours a day, and now I wake up after 5 hours, my heart rate is elevated, I'm sweating, and I just don't, my stomach hurts? Or is it like I'm starting to have brain fog now. I never used to have brain fog, and why? Or it's thinking through, these are things I used to eat, and now they're starting to make me feel really uncomfortable, and this is the time I'm eating them, and this is what I'm doing afterwards. And it's being able to really break down what it means than just, I don't feel great, or I feel different than before. I mean, doctors are not detectives in that way. I mean, they're really good at doing it, but if you can help explain things more clearly, then it definitely makes it easier for them to rule out diseases and then really pinpoint the things that you could be having issues.
Let's talk a little bit more about Peribloom. I love the name, by the way. It's such a cool name. So
Thank you.
tell me more about Peribloom and
All right. Well, and in Peribloom, it's really like perimenopause. This is like the time, like up to 15 years before menopause, which is the definition of menopause is 12 months of not having a period. And I added bloom to it because I think this is a time when women should be thinking about like their time to blossom. This is entering the second stage of your life. And I think that in the past, everyone's, society really thought, oh, when you're entering menopause, you're in a decline because now you can no longer have children, and now you're no longer like useful for society. But I think that now we've all come to understand like there's so much more that women can bring to the table than just having children. And so, and finding yourself in the second stage of life. I think that there's been so many different groups of people now who are really saying like midlife is now coming to a point where everyone is getting healthier, everyone is living longer, and it's not a point where we need to slow down. This is in fact a point where you can start to really see a shift in what you want to do with your life. Maybe you spent the first 30 years of your childhood, and then after that your 20s and your 30s up to your mid 40s really developing your career, getting the education you need to like get to a point financially where you can be on your own. But now it's like, okay, now you've figured out that point. Now what can you do to kind of like get to that next stage and really start to enjoy the things that maybe you've put off in the past, or focus on the things that you've put off in the past, such as your health, such as just connectivity, relationships. And it's really, for me, I think Peribloom is still like evolving, but what I want to do is like really bring together women to help them understand it's not about having it all, but it's like really being able to understand what's important to me and having those things in my life and not worry about what others perceive.
Yeah.
With what you want in your life. Like it does not matter if you went to like top tier Ivy League schools, have like 4 degrees, and then you decide you want to do something that's totally different and out of that realm and out of, completely different than what you studied in college and whatnot. Like maybe you went that path because you were academically very like strong when you were young, and these were opportunities that are given to you, or you had external stressors where like you wanted to have this role so that you could help pay your parents' bills or help, financially get to a stage in your life. But it's like, do you need to keep doing that until you're 80, until the day you die? Like there are people who love to do what they do, and they still make a tremendous amount of money doing it, and that is wonderful. They can do that. But there are other people that have been forced into these positions either through external metrics or through like societal pressures or whatnot, and they're at the brink of burnout. They're wondering why they're doing it. They still just keep doing it because they're not sure what else they want to do. I'm hoping with Peribloom, like people can take time to really focus on like, I need to start setting aside time for myself, because that's going to start filtering into the health and well-being component. That will start filtering into the mindfulness component, which I think is the one area that people really don't spend enough time focused on. I think that we're doing it a lot more now because there's so much more in the media about it, and everyone's talking a little bit more about mental health, but it's not about because you have a mental health issue, you need to start meditating. It's
Right.
maybe you need to start doing sound work, breath work, because it's better for your entire central nervous system.
Absolutely.
And then maybe we need to start thinking through, am I indulging too much? Like, I'm a big foodie. I love going out to eat. I love having great drinks, but it's like I've made conscious decisions to indulge when you can't indulge every single day. So that's when the nutrition piece comes in. It's, am I eating right for my body? Not just what gives me this like serotonin, dopamine high of like great cocktails and great desserts, or like overly, indulgent foods, but it's like, am I feeding my body correctly with the right fiber, with the right amount of protein, with the right amount of like fruits and vegetables and hydration, so that my body can perform in the way I need it to, so I can fulfill the things that I want to do in life.
I love these components, and I love even what you shared about mindfulness and meditation. I think a lot of people meditate thinking, what am I getting from this? I'm just sitting here and my mind is racing. And I've been meditating for the last year, and I've been one of those people saying, okay, am I really getting benefit from this? And then we had a really stressful family event on Friday, and in that moment I had a choice. I had a choice of death spiraling and, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in the car and I'm probably be really dangerous driving, or I had all of a sudden the effects of the meditation and the mindfulness kicked in, and it was like, no, I'm not doing this right now. I need a few minutes of pause. And I was able to actually navigate this in the least stressful way for myself. And so putting all those pieces together with the nutrition, really, it's like we're coming back into balance for years of being out of balance.
Right. I think it's how you respond to things.
Yeah.
And in that vein, the third pillar of fitness is so important. I'll tell you, I grew up in an environment where people are very, very into fitness. I mean, Vancouver is a place where there's a ton of nature, everybody is outdoorsy, and they do extreme sports, rock climbing, mountain biking, and like cold plunges into the ocean and all this crazy stuff. And so I always grew up not thinking I was athletic at all. Whereas if I moved to other parts of the country, I realized, I do a lot more physical activity than most, but I am not an ultra marathon runner. I am not a long distance biker and whatnot. But I've found later in life, and I would say, well, not even later in life, I've always been fairly active growing up, but never considered myself athletic. I found yoga in college. I went to college. It was a very stressful time, very stressful environment, very competitive place. And yoga really started getting me to focus and just calm down and take time for myself. And I'm really fortunate that like they just opened a yoga studio on campus, and I was able to start going. But I found that practice has really helped me through, going to my first real like big job in New York when I moved here in my late 20s, and then like really just dialing into all these other great sort of fitness and workout classes, and getting back into skiing and getting coached by my dad and other coaches that are based in Italy, and really realizing, I'm actually not a like non-athletic person. And that was a real mind shift for me, because I always thought that this was something that was holding me back, that I'm never going to be, an athletic person, because a lot of sports didn't come naturally to me. I wasn't someone who could just like pick it up and like pick up a sport and do it naturally, but just really having to work at it, and set my mind to it and work hard at it. But I found that that's helped me with a lot, as well, just like the weight training, especially at this stage in my life, like the weight training, weightlifting, doing like bar classes, Pilates classes, and heavier weight classes has really helped with back pain, neck pain, and just strengthening overall upper body, which I think is very important for women at this stage. They, but I don't mean that everyone has to start wearing like weighted vests and like bodybuilding every day, but it's like, don't be afraid of the weights. Don't be afraid of eating more protein. I think gone are the days of just being like skinny fit, which is great because I think that it's so much healthier for women to be, feel confident having a lean muscular body as opposed to just being really, really lanky and thin.
Definitely.
Which, all bodies are come differently, but I think that being able to just work on yourself, but having to do the work. I mean, it is hard work, and you do have to commit time to it. But again, another non-negotiable that has really resonated with me. And the last of supplementation, I always end with supplementation as opposed to leading with it, because the supplements world has become so like really exploded, especially with all of this like wellness and mindful like wellness industry. The challenge is so many supplements are not regulated. You cannot supplement your way to health. Like it does not replace whole foods. It does not replace your nutrition. Do not use supplements as your form of food. Supplements are only there in ways where your body can't properly absorb those same nutrients from food. You use a supplement to add to the food. Again, I think that those 4 pillars are so important to incorporate, and you can see real changes with your labs.
Absolutely.
If you really approach those 4 key measures appropriately.
So is Peribloom a community, or tell me where, in what capacity can people work with you?
You can go on the website, you can sign up. I've been sending out content. I've been, will love to talk to women one-on-one. Eventually would want to build out a community when we have like a good cult following. You can find me on Instagram as well, peribloom.care. And right now it's still in its infancy stages, but again, just being able to find like-minded women, be able to have conversations with them. I've done a tremendous, I think that it's even beyond just a health aspect, right? It's just even the guidance and the mentorship of how do you navigate these like high stakes careers?
Yeah.
And navigate real issues that are going on in the workplace, but also don't let that put a toll on your health. I think that is the intersection where I can really speak to because of the work that the roles that I've had, and the career that I have in commercial real estate in both New York and California, and being able to deal with these high stake environments that are like very stressful, and negotiating large deals in rooms that are primarily male dominated, right. And also navigating different types of coworkers and different types of people, and managing different people, but also managing yourself as well, and having that like a community and a place where women can come together and really understand how to learn and understand their bodies, understand like what they should be doing in tandem with work. Yes, having a glass of wine every so often after work to decompress is great, but if you're having 1 or 2 bottles of wine every single night by yourself just to be able to get yourself to sleep and then wake up the next day is probably going to have some challenging effects for you in the future.
Yeah.
Because
so woman
happen.
yeah.
People.
Yeah, I see it happening to a lot of people, and I think if we can get back into I love the 4 pillars and really using those to guide our life, then you're really going into you call it the next, I forget what you called it, but I call it the second act of our life. Much more empowered, much more, we're advocating for ourselves, we're putting ourselves first, we're putting our health first, and we're living from a full cup rather than an empty cup that's been given out to everybody else. So,
Right. And I
yeah,
just think that health has always been everyone's last priority. Well, not everyone, but I think that for most people, especially high achieving, ambitious people that are so focused on like, I want to get, to this stage in my life. I want to get this career. I want to get this job. I want to do these things. It's your last priority until it's forced upon you to become your first priority because there's
yeah,
like a crisis. But if we start to really make meaningful small changes right now, maybe you won't have that huge crisis awakening moment that will completely derail you from your North Star goals in whatever it is in life. But again, unfortunately, from what I've seen, it's like a lot of times people have to get to that breaking point before they can shift back. I
definitely.
wouldn't say everybody, but it takes it. I'm trying to advocate for like, don't let it go there.
Yeah, it doesn't need to go there. I mean, I'm one of those that let it go there before I started to take things into my own hands. So yeah, it's a good message that it doesn't have to go there. And we can start with Peribloom, and it's peribloom.care. That's the website.
That is the Instagram, and then the website is peribloom.com.
Peribloom.com. So we'll make sure to put those links in the show notes. This is a conversation that I feel like we could keep having. There's so many parts to unpack in this, but I think it's going to be really helpful to the listeners on advocating for themselves. That's the bottom line message.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Priya. It's been so great chatting with you. And again, if we can talk again about little life, health hacks, life hacks, and things that have helped not just me, but also the people around me to just live more like fully and more mindfully, and while balancing all the other things that they want in their lives.
Thank you, Andrea, for being part of the show. Thank you for all your knowledge. And yeah, we'll continue the conversation.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. And this show was brought to you by Project Icon.
This